Ethan remembered the summer skies of his childhood like they were painted on the heavens. The sun would shine bright over the green forests of their small settlement on planet Leora 4, casting golden light over the rivers and hills. Birds with shimmering feathers would glide through the air, and the gentle wind carried the scent of wildflowers. It was a world untouched by war, a world where children could run free and imagine anything. Ethan was 10 years old then, full of energy and curiosity. He loved to climb trees taller than houses and run faster than the river currents. But what he loved most was exploring with Leora. She was the same age, a bright and clever girl with golden hair that sparkled in the sun and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her laughter was like music, and when she ran beside him, it felt like the world itself was smiling. "Ethan, wait," Leora called, trying to keep up with him as he dashed toward the river. "You'll never catch me," Ethan shouted back, jumping over a fallen log with ease. Leora panted, but her determination shone in her eyes. "I'll catch you one day. You'll see." The two of them spent hours running through the forests, climbing rocks and exploring hidden paths. Sometimes they would stop by a quiet clearing, where sunlight danced through the trees and the air smelled of pine and earth. There they would sit and share their dreams. "I want to travel to the stars one day," Ethan said, his eyes reflecting the sparkling river. "I want to see new planets and meet strange creatures." Leora smiled. "I want to do that too, but I also want something simple. I want to be with someone I trust, someone I can laugh with." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Like a best friend?" "More than a friend," Leora said softly. "Someone special?" Ethan grinned, not fully understanding what she meant, but he wanted to make her happy. He reached for her hand. "Then I'll be that someone, Leora, I promise." Leora's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," Ethan said, his voice full of childhood certainty. "I'll marry you someday." Leora laughed, the sound ringing like bells. "You promise?" "I promise," Ethan said, feeling proud of his words. "No matter what happens, I'll keep my promise." They shook hands, sealing their vow. To Ethan, it was a simple, innocent promise made by two children. But to Leora, it was serious. She held onto it like a treasure, a promise that connected their hearts even when they were apart. Life, however, had other plans. A few months later, Ethan's family received a sudden opportunity to move to a different planet for work. It was a chance for a better life, but it meant leaving everything behind, including Leora. On the day of their departure, the two children met one last time by the river. The sky was tinged with orange and pink, and the wind whispered through the trees as if it too knew this was a farewell. "Ethan," Leora's voice trembled slightly. "I'll come back," Ethan said, trying to sound confident. "I promise." Leora smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'll wait. And I'll remember your promise." Ethan waved as the transport ship lifted off. He watched the forests shrink beneath him, the river glinting like a silver ribbon. He felt a pang in his heart, but convinced himself that they would meet again. In his mind, childhood promises were like bubbles, beautiful, but sometimes they floated away. Years passed and life changed both of them. Ethan grew into a young man, clever and hardworking. He spent his days learning about machines, engines, and the mechanics of space travel. His curiosity never faded, and he dreamed of exploring distant planets, of discovering wonders no human had ever seen. Leora, on the other hand, stayed on her home planet, growing into her role as the daughter of a noble family. She learned diplomacy, leadership, and the ways of her people. She excelled in every lesson, every challenge, guided by her strong sense of duty and her sharp mind. Yet despite her busy life, she never forgot Ethan's promise. The memory of that summer afternoon by the river stayed with her, warm and comforting. One day news arrived that changed everything. Leora's family revealed that she was the heir to the throne of a distant, advanced planet. Her parents had carefully protected her childhood, but the time had come for her to assume her responsibilities. She was now a queen in waiting, and her life would never be the same. Meanwhile, Ethan's work led him to join a team developing interstellar travel. He built engines, calculated trajectories, and tested spacecraft for distant missions. He loved the work, and it fulfilled him. But there was always a part of him that missed the simplicity of childhood, especially the friendship he had shared with Leora. Then, one fateful day, their worlds collided again. Ethan was sent on a mission to Leora's planet, testing a new transportation system for interstellar travel. He expected meetings with engineers and scientists, discussions about technology and science. He did not expect to be summoned to the royal palace. When he entered the grand hall, his heart skipped a beat. Standing before him, dressed in regal robes, was Leora. She had grown into a striking woman, regal and graceful, with an aura of strength that made everyone around her take notice. But to Ethan, she was still the girl who ran through the forest with him, who laughed by the river, who had made him promise a vow long ago. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but firm, "do you remember the promise you made me?" Ethan froze. The memory of that long-ago summer afternoon came rushing back. He had never forgotten, but he had never imagined it would matter now. He hesitated, unsure how to respond. "You said you would marry me," Leora continued, her eyes steady and unwavering. "I am asking you to honor that promise." Ethan swallowed hard. He looked around at the palace, at the courtiers watching silently, and realized this was no longer a simple childhood vow. It carried weight, expectation, and the eyes of a people. I don't know if I can," Ethan admitted, though his heart ached. "I never thought this would happen." Leora's expression softened slightly, but her determination remained. "Promises are not made lightly, Ethan. You said them. I trusted them. I am asking you to trust them now." Ethan took a deep breath. He could see the strength in her eyes, the wisdom she had gained over the years, and the sincerity of her words. In that moment, he understood that their bond was more than childhood play. It was something real, something that had survived time, distance, and life itself. The palace doors opened behind him, and aides whispered hurriedly. There were duties to attend, messages to send, and plans to make. But for Ethan and Leora, time seemed to stand still. The promise they had made as children had returned, stronger than ever, demanding attention, courage, and perhaps even love. As they walked through the palace gardens, Ethan realized that life had brought him back to the girl he had once promised. But now it was not just a promise, it was a chance to stand beside a queen, to face challenges together, and to honor a vow that had shaped both their lives. And deep down, Ethan knew that no matter what happened, the bond between them was real. It was the kind of connection that survived years, planets, and trials. A bond that could change the course of their lives and perhaps even the fate of the worlds around them. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying memories of laughter, rivers, and sunlit forests. Ethan took Leora's hand, feeling the weight of the past and the hope of the future. The adventure of their lives was only just beginning, and the promise made long ago would guide them into the unknown. Word count, Beta 1320. Ethan could hardly believe the world he had stepped into. The palace was unlike anything he had imagined. Towering walls of polished crystal reflected the sunlight, and gardens bloomed with flowers that seemed to glow with a soft inner light. Waterways curved gracefully around the palace grounds, and creatures that looked like a mix of birds and dragons danced above the fountains. It was breathtaking, and there, at the center of it all, was Leora. She walked with poise and confidence, every step echoing the authority of someone born to lead. Yet when she looked at him, there was that same warmth he remembered from childhood, the laugh that chased away worries, the eyes that seemed to understand him without words. "Welcome." "Ethan," Leora said, her voice calm but carrying a weight he had never heard before. "I am glad you could come. I didn't know I would be meeting you like this," Ethan admitted. His hands itched to reach out to touch something familiar, but he held back. You're the queen now," Leora smiled faintly. "Yes, and you've grown into a man of great skill. My advisors told me about your work. You build ships and machines that humans only dream of." Ethan felt a small surge of pride, but also a strange nervousness. He had expected a reunion filled with memories and laughter, not royal duties and expectations. "I didn't think I would ever see you again," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But I remember my promise." Leora's gaze softened. "And I have waited for it. I have waited for you, Ethan. Not just as a boy, but as someone I hoped could be by my side when the time came." For a moment, Ethan felt the past and present collide. Memories of running through forests, laughing by rivers, and sharing dreams flooded his mind. He could almost hear the wind through the trees and see the golden sunlight that had warmed their faces. Yet now, this was not a game. This was real, and it was complicated. "Your kingdom, it's huge," Ethan said, his eyes scanning the palace gardens. "I didn't realize. It's nothing like home." Leora nodded. "It is different, yes. But it is my responsibility. My people depend on me and I cannot fail them. Her voice carried a quiet determination, one that made Ethan's heart race. She was no longer the playful girl from the riverbank. She was a leader, a queen, and someone whose trust was now in his hands. Over the next few days, Ethan was given a tour of the palace and the city. He met scholars who studied distant stars, engineers who built advanced spacecraft, and soldiers who trained to protect the kingdom. Everything was unfamiliar yet fascinating. Ethan also met the royal council. They were polite, but their eyes were cautious. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. A human was not common in Leora's court, and even fewer humans had skills as advanced as Ethan's. He realized quickly that his presence carried weight, not just for the promise, but for politics, technology, and the kingdom's future. "Ethan," Leora said one evening, walking with him along a balcony that overlooked the city, "I want you to understand something. The promise you made as a child, it means more than words now. It is a bond. My people see it as a symbol, a sign that the future can be united." Ethan's stomach tightened. I didn't know it would be like this. I never imagined a childhood promise would carry this much responsibility. Leora took his hand gently. "Promises are not made lightly. You made it with sincerity. Now you have a choice, to honor it or to break it. But understand this, Ethan. Breaking it would have consequences beyond us. It could affect the alliances between planets, the trust of my people, and even the safety of my kingdom." Ethan nodded slowly. He felt the weight of her words pressing on him. This was not a simple matter of childhood friendship anymore. It was a decision that could shape worlds. And yet, deep inside, he realized that he cared for Leora, not just because of a promise, but because of the person she had become. But before he could fully consider his feelings, trouble arrived. One morning, the palace alarm rang out. The city guards rushed past Ethan and Leora, and a royal aide approached them urgently. "Your Majesty, scouts report movement from the neighboring territory. They are preparing something." Leora's eyes narrowed. "Show me." They hurried to the viewing balcony where a holographic map displayed the surrounding planets. A fleet from a neighboring empire was massing at the border, their ships sleek and armed with weapons that could devastate cities. Ethan stared at the holograms, feeling a thrill and fear at the same time. He had never imagined being part of such a real interstellar conflict. This is serious," Ethan said. "They could attack at any moment." Leora's expression was calm, but Ethan noticed the tension in her shoulders. "Yes, I expected it might happen. That is why I need you, Ethan. I need your skills, your knowledge of engineering and strategy. We have to prepare defenses." Ethan swallowed. He had trained for space missions and engineering, not for war. Yet he couldn't deny that he felt a spark of purpose. Here he could do more than repair machines or study stars. He could help protect a kingdom, and he could help Leora, the girl he had promised long ago. For the next few days, Ethan worked tirelessly. He analyzed defense systems, upgraded spacecraft, and coordinated training for soldiers. Leora consulted with him constantly, their discussions ranging from technical specifications to tactical strategies. The more he worked with her, the more he saw her brilliance. She was not just a queen in title, she was a leader in action. During a quiet moment, Leora walked with him through the palace gardens. The air was calm, the fountains sparkling in the sunlight. For a moment, it felt like the old days, the two children running freely, sharing dreams and laughter. "Ethan," Leora said softly, "do you remember our promise?" Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of it again. "Yes, I remember, and I think I understand now. It wasn't just about words. It was about trust, loyalty, and being there for each other no matter what." Leora smiled. "Exactly. And now it matters more than ever, not just for us, but for the people we care about." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on a soft cot in a guest chamber, staring at the ceiling as memories of childhood mixed with the reality of his present. The promise had seemed simple then, almost like a game. But now it was real, and he realized that he didn't just want to honor it because of duty. He wanted to honor it because of the bond he felt with Leora. The next morning brought news that intensified the tension. Scouts reported that the neighboring empire had crossed the border and was sending a fleet toward the capital city. The palace erupted in activity. Soldiers trained, engineers prepared defenses, and the royal council debated strategy. Ethan found himself at the center of it all, working alongside Leora to implement plans that could save thousands of lives. Every decision carried weight. Every calculation could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Yet through it all, Leora's confidence never wavered, and Ethan found himself drawing strength from her calm determination. During a briefing, Leora turned to him. "Ethan, I need you to be my advisor in this, not just for engineering, but for strategy. I trust you to help me make the right decisions." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. He realized that his childhood promise had brought him here, not just as a friend, but as a partner in leadership. And for the first time, he understood that being by Leora's side could mean more than companionship. It could mean shaping the future of an entire kingdom. As the sun set over the crystal towers of the palace, Ethan and Leora stood together overlooking the city. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, and the gentle wind carried the scent of flowers and water. "We have a long road ahead," Leora said softly. Ethan looked at her, feeling a deep certainty. "We'll face it together. I promise." Leora's smile was warm, a reflection of trust and hope. "Then we will be ready, Ethan. Together." And as night fell over the palace, the two of them prepared for the challenges to come. Childhood promises had led them to this moment, but now it was their courage, skill, and trust in each other that would determine the fate of the kingdom. The palace was alive with tension. Outside the crystal towers, the city buzzed with preparations for the coming threat. Soldiers marched, engineers checked weapons, and scouts reported movements on the borders. Inside, Ethan worked tirelessly with Leora, helping her prepare the kingdom for anything the enemy might throw their way. Ethan had never imagined he would play such a critical role. His days were filled with meetings, calculations, and strategy sessions. He adjusted defenses, improved the energy shields around the city, and redesigned spacecraft for better speed and maneuverability. Leora trusted him completely, and that trust weighed heavily on him. A mistake could cost lives, but hesitation was not an option. One afternoon, Ethan walked through the royal armory, checking the inventory of weapons and supplies. The room was vast, with walls lined with gleaming weapons armor and strange devices he had never seen before. He ran his fingers along the polished surface of a plasma rifle and marveled at the advanced technology. "Impressive, isn't it?" Leora's voice came from behind him. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. "Our people have always been skilled in both technology and combat. That is why we survive, even against powerful enemies." Ethan turned to her, meeting her gaze. "You're amazing, Leora. I've never met anyone like you. You plan, you lead, and yet you carry this weight with such calm." Leora smiled faintly but didn't relax. "I don't always feel calm, but I must. My people look to me for strength. If I falter, they falter too." Ethan felt a surge of admiration. He had promised her a long time ago, thinking it was just a game. But now he realized that promise was connected to something far bigger, the lives of thousands, the future of an entire kingdom. And he wanted to honor it. Over the next few days, subtle dangers began to appear. Sabotage attempts were discovered in the palace workshops. Strange reports came from the outer city, and spies were rumored to be hiding among the servants. Ethan and Leora realized that their challenges were not just from outside enemies, they had traitors within their own walls. During a late-night strategy session, Leora leaned over the holographic map, her fingers tracing the positions of their defenses. "We cannot afford to trust blindly," she said. "Even those closest to me may have their own agendas. We must be careful." Ethan nodded. "We'll find them, and we'll make sure they cannot harm anyone." As they worked together, Ethan noticed how capable Leora was. She didn't just give orders. She thought through every detail, anticipating problems before they happened. And yet he also saw the moments when doubt flickered in her eyes. Those moments were brief, almost hidden, but he wanted to be there to support her, to share the burden. One evening, after a long day of planning and testing defense systems, Ethan and Leora found themselves in the palace gardens. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the fountains reflected the fading light. "You've grown so much since we were children," Ethan said quietly. I barely recognized you at first," Leora laughed softly. "And you've grown into a man I can rely on. You are clever, brave, and surprisingly patient." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "It hasn't been easy, though. I didn't expect my childhood promise to bring me into a palace with spies and armies and responsibilities I never imagined. Leora turned to him, her gaze softening. Promises have power, Ethan. They remind us of who we are, of what we value. You made that promise out of kindness, friendship, and now it guides us both. Ethan realized that Leora's words were true. Their bond was not just a childhood memory. It was a force that gave him courage, clarity, and a sense of purpose. He wanted to protect her, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The next day brought the first serious challenge. A group of saboteurs had infiltrated the city outskirts, targeting supply lines and communication networks. Leora and Ethan rushed to coordinate the response. Soldiers were dispatched to block the attackers, while engineers worked to repair damaged systems. Ethan led a small team, using his knowledge of technology to set traps and reroute energy shields. His instructions were precise, and the team followed without hesitation. Together, they cornered the saboteurs, capturing them before any serious harm could occur. Leora observed the operation from above, her eyes following every movement. When it was over, she descended to stand beside Ethan. "You handled that remarkably well," she said. "I knew I could trust you." Ethan felt a mix of pride and relief. "I couldn't have done it without you. Your plans made it possible to act quickly and safely." As the days passed, Ethan grew more confident in his role. He and Leora spent hours together, planning defenses, analyzing reports, and discussing strategy. Through it all, their bond deepened. They shared memories from childhood, stories of their separate lives, and small moments of laughter amid the tension. Yet, there was also a quiet struggle within Ethan. He was beginning to feel something more than friendship for Leora, but he was unsure how to express it. The promise he had made as a child had brought him here, but now he wondered if it could also guide his heart. One night, while walking alone through the palace corridors, Ethan found himself in the royal library. Rows of ancient books and holographic displays filled the room with a soft glow. He ran his fingers over the spines of old tomes, feeling the weight of history around him. Leora entered quietly, noticing his thoughtful expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. "I'm thinking about everything. About the promise, about my place here. About how much has changed since we were kids." Leora approached and placed a hand on his arm. "It's natural to feel overwhelmed. But remember, you are not alone. I am here with you. We are facing this together." Ethan looked into her eyes and saw the same trust and warmth he remembered from their childhood. In that moment, he realized that he didn't just want to honor a promise. He wanted to stand by her because he cared for her, deeply and sincerely. The calm was broken the next day by a warning from the scouts. A large fleet of enemy ships had been detected near the borders of the kingdom, moving faster than expected. The palace erupted in activity once more. Soldiers rushed to positions, engineers checked weapons, and the royal council debated tactics. Ethan and Leora worked side by side, coordinating the defenses. Using his knowledge of engineering and strategy, Ethan helped design traps and reroute energy shields to protect key areas of the city. Leora, with her natural leadership, directed the soldiers and civilians, keeping morale high even as fear whispered at the edges of their minds. During a brief break, Leora turned to Ethan. "Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if we hadn't made that promise?" she asked softly. Ethan thought for a moment. "I guess we'd have grown up apart, wondering about each other, maybe never meeting again. But I think that promise changed everything. It brought me here to help you, to be part of something bigger than myself." Leora smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes, that promise. It was more than words. It was a beginning. And now we have a chance to turn it into something real." Ethan felt a surge of hope. He realized that, for the first time, he was not just following a promise, he was choosing to stand beside her, to protect her, and to face whatever challenges came together. The sun set over the palace, casting long shadows across the gardens and fountains. Ethan and Leora stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city below. The air was calm, but the tension of the coming battle lingered. "We will face what comes," Ethan said quietly. "Together." Leora nodded, her hand resting lightly on his. "Yes, together." As night fell, the stars above the palace seemed to shine brighter, as if witnessing the bond between them. Childhood promises had led them here, but now their courage, loyalty, and trust would be tested like never before. And both Ethan and Leora knew that the trials ahead would not only determine the fate of the kingdom, but also the future of the bond that had begun so many years ago by a river under the summer sun. The morning air carried a sense of tension that even the bright sunlight could not chase away. Scouts had reported that the enemy fleet was approaching faster than anticipated. Their sleek ships moved like shadows across the sky, their weapons glinting ominously. The people of the city worked tirelessly, reinforcing barricades and preparing emergency shelters, while soldiers took their positions, ready for battle. Ethan stood beside Leora on the balcony of the palace overlooking the city. His heart beat faster than the hum of the palace's energy shields. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, yet standing here made it all feel frighteningly real. "They are stronger than I expected," Ethan said, his voice tight. "But our defenses are ready. We can protect the city if we act together." Leora's eyes were calm, filled with resolve. "We have no choice but to face them. We will protect our people. And I need you with me, Ethan. You are not just an advisor. You are my partner in this." Ethan nodded, gripping the railing tightly. He thought of the promise he had made long ago and how it had brought him to this moment. This was more than a childhood vow. It was a test of courage, loyalty, and heart. He was determined to honor it. As the first enemy ships appeared on the horizon, a hush fell over the city. Citizens peered anxiously from windows and rooftops while soldiers adjusted their positions. The enemy fleet glimmered in the sunlight, their numbers overwhelming. But Leora and Ethan had a plan. "Activate the energy shields," Leora commanded. "Deploy the drones to intercept their advance. Ethan, take the secondary fleet and lead the counterattack." Ethan quickly moved to the command console, issuing orders to engineers and pilots. Within moments, drones zipped into the sky, intercepting the first wave of enemy ships. The city's energy shields flickered to life, forming a protective barrier around the palace and key districts. The battle began in a whirlwind of light and sound. Enemy ships fired beams that lit up the sky, and explosions shook the ground. Ethan piloted a small fighter craft alongside his human and alien allies, weaving through the chaos to strike at the enemy's formation. His hands moved with precision, his mind calculating every movement, every trajectory. Leora coordinated the defenses from the palace, her voice calm and commanding over the communications network. "Redirect power to the northern shields. Concentrate drones on the left flank.
Keep civilians in the safe zones."
Ethan glanced at her image on the screen, feeling a mix of admiration and resolve. She was fearless, yet every decision she made was measured and precise. He realized that she was more than a leader. She was the heart of the kingdom, guiding everyone with wisdom and courage. Hours passed in a blur of strategy, attacks, and counterattacks. Enemy ships were destroyed, but more kept coming. Ethan's small fighter squadron took heavy fire, yet he never faltered. He thought of Leora, of the promise, and of the people relying on him. Fear existed, but it could not control him. Suddenly, a massive enemy cruiser broke through the defenses, heading straight for the palace. Alarms blared, and soldiers scrambled to respond. Ethan knew he had to act quickly. "Leora," he called over the comms. "They're aiming for the palace." "I'll intercept the cruiser. You keep the defenses active." Leora's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "Be careful, Ethan. You must return safely." Ethan's fighter surged forward, dodging beams of energy as he approached the massive cruiser. He fired precise shots at its engines, causing it to slow. The cruiser's weapons targeted him, and explosions rocked the craft, but Ethan kept his focus. With a final, skillful maneuver, he disabled the cruiser's main weapon and forced it to retreat. Back at the palace, Leora breathed a sigh of relief. "Ethan, that was incredible," she said softly over the comms. Ethan's voice was steady, though he felt the adrenaline coursing through him. "We're not done yet. The rest of the fleet is still out there." As the battle continued, Ethan noticed a group of enemy fighters breaking away, aiming for the city's supply lines. Without hesitation, he led a squad to intercept them. The fight was intense, and his squad took heavy fire, but they managed to protect the supplies. Each victory, small as it seemed, was crucial for the survival of the city. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Leora faced her own trials. Advisors warned her of political risks, and whispers of doubt spread among the council. Some questioned her youth, others her decision to rely on a human ally. But Leora stood firm, guided by trust in Ethan and her own wisdom. She knew that fear and doubt could not rule her actions. Only courage and clarity could. During a brief lull in the battle, Ethan returned to the palace. His uniform was scorched, his hands blistered, and his heart still raced from the adrenaline. Leora met him at the entrance, her eyes filled with concern. "You risked yourself," she said, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Why?" Ethan looked at her, his face serious. "Because it's not just about duty. It's about protecting you, and everyone here. I promised you once long ago. I couldn't let that promise fail." Leora's expression softened. "You honor more than a childhood vow, Ethan. You honor courage, loyalty, and the heart of our people." The enemy fleet launched a final, desperate attack. Explosions rocked the city as enemy ships struck with all their might. Ethan and Leora coordinated the defense with unwavering focus, their minds and hearts working as one. Drones intercepted attackers, energy shields absorbed blasts, and soldiers defended every street and building. In the chaos, one of Leora's elite guards was cornered by enemy fighters. Ethan didn't hesitate. He piloted his fighter into the midst of the attackers, diverting their fire and saving the guard. The people of the city watched in awe, seeing both human ingenuity and courage in action. Finally, after hours of relentless combat, the enemy fleet began to retreat. Their ships were damaged, their numbers depleted, and their morale shattered. The city had survived, and the palace stood strong, a symbol of resilience and unity. Leora stood on the balcony, overlooking the battlefield below. She breathed in the evening air, feeling relief mixed with pride. Ethan joined her, standing tall despite exhaustion. "You did it," Leora said softly. "We did it. Together." Ethan smiled faintly, though his body ached. "It wasn't easy, but we couldn't have done it without each other." Leora's eyes met his, and for a moment the world around them seemed to disappear. The palace, the city, the battle, they all faded into the background. What remained was the bond between them, forged in childhood and strengthened through trials. "You kept your promise," Leora said, her voice steady but filled with emotion, not just with words but with action. "You stood by me and by our people." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. "I promised you when we were kids. I didn't know it would come to this, but I'm glad it did. It made me realize what really matters." The city began to calm as the people emerged from shelters, cheering and celebrating their victory. Soldiers saluted. Engineers repaired damaged systems, and citizens embraced one another, grateful for their survival. Amidst it all, Ethan and Leora stood together, symbols of courage and partnership. That night, as the stars sparkled above the palace, Ethan and Leora walked through the gardens. The fountains glowed softly, casting reflections of light on their faces. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scents of flowers and fresh earth. "We faced our first great trial," Leora said quietly, "and we survived. But more challenges will come." Ethan nodded. "I know, but I also know that we can face them together. I'll be here, Leora. Always." She smiled, a mixture of gratitude and trust shining in her eyes. "And I'll be here too, Ethan. Together we will protect this kingdom. And each other." The battle had ended, but their journey was far from over. Childhood promises had brought them together. But now courage, loyalty, and trust would guide them through the trials yet to come. And both Ethan and Leora knew that the bond between them was unbreakable. A force stronger than fear, stronger than enemies, stronger than anything the universe could throw at them. The city slowly returned to normal. Streets that had been scarred by battle were now being repaired, and the people emerged from shelters, their faces filled with relief and hope. Soldiers patrolled the streets to ensure safety, while engineers worked tirelessly to restore energy grids and damaged communication networks. The palace, though slightly damaged, remained a symbol of strength and resilience. Ethan walked beside Leora through the restored gardens, the soft glow of lanterns casting warm light over the paths. The fountains sparkled, and the gentle rustling of leaves carried a sense of peace. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of battle, and yet the memory of their struggle lingered in their hearts. "You did wonderfully," Leora said, her voice soft but steady. "You risked your life to protect this city, and you stood by me when it mattered most." Ethan shook his head, a faint smile on his face. "We did it together. You led, I followed. Sometimes I helped, but it was always you guiding the way." Leora reached out, placing her hand over his. You weren't just a follower, Ethan, you were my partner. Your courage, skill, and trust gave me strength. Without you, I could not have done it. Ethan felt warmth spread through him. For years he had remembered a promise made as a child, never imagining that it would shape his life in ways he could never have predicted. Yet here, in the palace gardens, he realized that promise had led him to something far greater than words alone. You know, Ethan said quietly, when we were kids, I never thought a promise could mean so much. I thought it was just something fun to say. But now I understand. A promise is more than words, it's a bond, a commitment to stand by someone no matter what. Leora smiled, her eyes glimmering with understanding. Exactly. And you kept it, Ethan. You kept it in every action, every choice, every risk you took. That is why I trust you completely. The days that followed were filled with recovery and reflection. Ethan continued to help the kingdom rebuild, using his knowledge to strengthen defenses, improve infrastructure, and assist in training new recruits. Leora guided the citizens with wisdom, fairness, and compassion. Together, they became a team that the people admired and respected. Yet amid all the rebuilding and strategy, Ethan and Leora found moments for themselves. They walked through the gardens, shared quiet meals in the palace, and spoke of dreams and memories. In these moments, the bond that had started long ago by a river on a summer afternoon grew stronger, deeper, and more real. One evening, after a long day of repairs and planning, Ethan and Leora stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The sunset painted the sky with brilliant shades of red and gold, and the distant mountains glowed softly in the evening light. Ethan, Leora said, her voice gentle, we've faced so much together, battles, threats, and challenges that could have broken anyone. But we didn't break. We grew stronger, and through it all you kept your promise. Ethan turned to her, feeling the weight and warmth of her words. I didn't just keep the promise because of duty. I wanted to, because you matter to me, Leora. You always have. Leora's eyes softened, and for a moment the world around them disappeared. The palace, the city, the people, they all faded into the background. What remained was the bond between them, forged in childhood, tested in battle, and strengthened by trust, courage, and understanding. You've always had a place in my heart, Leora said. Even when we were apart, I knew that someday you would be here, that we would stand together. And now we can. Ethan reached for her hand, holding it gently. Then let's not waste any more time. Together we can face whatever comes next, and we'll do it side by side like we promised long ago. Leora nodded, her smile radiant. Yes, together. The people of the city noticed the bond between them, a symbol of hope and unity. Citizens spoke of their courage, how a human and a queen had stood together against overwhelming odds. Children played in the streets, inspired by the story of bravery and loyalty, and soldiers, young and old, felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that their leaders shared not only duty but trust and respect. Weeks passed, and the kingdom stabilized. Trade resumed, defenses were strengthened, and alliances with neighboring planets were reinforced. Leora and Ethan continued their work, guiding their people with wisdom, courage, and compassion. Yet, amid all the responsibilities, they found moments to simply be together, enjoying the simple joys of life. One morning, Leora called Ethan to the palace garden. The sunlight streamed through the trees, casting playful shadows on the path. Birds sang, and the fountain sparkled with crystalline water. Ethan, she said softly, we've fought battles, faced dangers, and rebuilt a kingdom. But there's one more thing I want from you. Ethan looked at her, curious. What is it? Leora smiled, a mix of joy and seriousness in her eyes. I want you to be by my side, not just as an ally or friend, but as my partner, as my husband. Will you honor the promise we made so long ago and join me fully in every way? Ethan felt a surge of emotion. The promise he had made as a child, the bond they had nurtured through years of separation, challenges, and trials, had led to this moment. Without hesitation, he took her hands in his. Yes, Leora, he said, his voice steady but full of feeling. I promise. I will be by your side always. As your husband, your partner, and your friend. Tears glimmered in Leora's eyes as she smiled, relief and happiness shining through. Then let this promise, once made as children, become a bond that guides our future. The palace announced the union, and the people celebrated with joy and excitement. The city was alive with music, laughter, and light, as citizens and allies came together to honor the courage and loyalty of their queen and her chosen partner. The ceremony was simple, yet beautiful, held in the palace gardens where sunlight reflected off the fountains and flowers bloomed in every color. Ethan and Leora stood together holding hands, looking into each other's eyes. The officiant spoke words of unity, respect, and love, and the couple exchanged vows that went beyond childhood promises. They were pledges of trust, partnership, and devotion. When the ceremony ended, Ethan and Leora looked around at their people, feeling the love and support of the kingdom. They realized that their bond had become more than just personal. It had inspired hope, courage, and unity for all who witnessed it. Later, as they walked through the quiet palace gardens, the evening sky painted with stars, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From childhood friends, separated by distance, to partners in life and leadership, every challenge had shaped them, strengthened them, and brought them closer. "I never imagined this," Ethan said softly. "From a promise by a river to a kingdom we protect together. It feels like a dream." Leora laughed gently. "Sometimes dreams are just the beginning. Ethan, reality, with all its challenges and victories, is even better when you share it with someone you trust." Ethan took her hand, feeling a sense of completeness he had never known before. "Then let's face the future together. Whatever comes, we'll handle it as a team, as partners, and as a family." Leora leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort, trust, and love. Yes, together, always. And under the stars in the palace gardens where battles had been fought and victories celebrated, a childhood promise had been fulfilled. The queen and her chosen partner, united by courage, loyalty, and love, stood ready to face the future, side by side, heart to heart, and hand in hand. The kingdom had been protected, the enemy defeated, and the people inspired. But most importantly, Ethan and Leora had honored the bond that began long ago with a simple vow, a promise to stand by each other, no matter the trials, no matter the distance, and no matter the world. And in that promise, they found not just duty or responsibility, but love, friendship, and a future bright with endless possibilities.